Hey everyone, before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any of our shocking, mysterious, and real-life stories. Now, get ready, because the story I'm about to tell you is about a man whose entire life is turned upside down by a single USB, revealing secrets about his real family. Let's get started. I always believed I knew who I was. My name, my family, my childhood. None of it ever felt mysterious. I had a mother who seemed cold but stable, an older brother who rarely spoke to me, and a father who, well, he was complicated, soft, emotional, too emotional. According to my mother, he cried easily, apologized too often, and spent most nights alone in his study, staring at old family photos as if they were windows into a life he wished he had lived differently. That I grew up thinking he was the weak one, that he was the reason we struggled financially, the reason my mother looked perpetually exhausted, the reason my brother treated me like a burden. But I never questioned the stories, not once. Not until the night he died. That he was in the hospital for 2 weeks before the end. A quiet decline. Every day he seemed less like a man and more like a memory slowly fading out. On his last night, when even the nurses believed he wouldn't speak again, he suddenly grabbed my wrist with a strength that didn't match his condition. "Listen," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. "Everything you think you know is wrong." I froze. "Dad? What are you talking about?" His hand trembled as he pressed something small and cold into my palm. A USB stick. Black. Old. Scratched. "You open this," he said, "only after I'm gone. Not before. And you do not. Do you hear me? You do not trust anyone." His eyes were wild, more alive than they had been in weeks. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wanted to tell you sooner. I should have, but they wouldn't let me." "Who?" I asked, my heart pounding. But he didn't answer that. He just said the last words he ever spoke to me. "You were never supposed to find out." He died an hour later. My mother didn't see or my brother didn't speak. I was the only one who stayed with his body after they covered him with a sheet. And the whole time, I could feel the USB burning in my pocket like a live heartbeat. That I didn't open it immediately. Part of me was afraid. Another part felt guilty, like I was betraying him by even considering following his final instructions. But the more I thought about it, the more one thing bothered me. Why did he say they? Why did he sound frightened? And why did he look so relieved when he handed me the USB? Relieved, like he had finally passed off a burden that had been killing him for years. That I waited until after the funeral, until my mother finished pretending she was devastated, until my brother finished giving me cold stares like I had done something wrong. Then, alone in my childhood room, I plugged the USB into my laptop. It took a while to load. It was old, older than I expected. Maybe 10, 12 years. Inside were 4 folders. 1. Financial records. 2. Photos. 3. Letters. 4. For my child, I should have watched the videos first. But something pulled me toward the documents instead. Maybe because I could already feel the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Maybe because part of me already sensed what was coming. I opened financial records first. Inside were dozens, maybe hundreds, of PDFs. Bank statements, transfers, accounts I had never heard of. Except they weren't my father's accounts. They were my mother's. Years of deposits, huge sums of money. Then sudden withdrawals, transfers to an unknown name. And all of these were hidden, secret, not joint accounts, private. The earliest records dated back to when I was around 4 years old. At a time I barely remembered. At a time my father, apparently, remembered all too well. The next folder, photos, was worse. Old pictures of me as a child, but not with my family. Not with my mother. Not with my brother. With strangers. A man and a woman I had never seen before. Holding me, smiling with me, kissing my head. In every photo. They looked like parents. My parents. I felt sick. My skin went cold. My hands started shaking so hard I nearly dropped the laptop. I kept scrolling. Picture after picture. My mother was in none of them. My brother was in none of them. But my father was in all of them. Sometimes he was holding me. Sometimes he was talking to the other man. The other woman. Sometimes he looked terrified. Sometimes, he looked like he was running that I clicked the next folder. Letters that held scanned documents and handwritten notes. Some were from lawyers. Some were from people whose names I didn't recognize. But one letter was addressed to the future guardian of my name. It wasn't addressed to my mother or my father or anyone I knew. I opened it, and my entire life shattered. If you are reading this, it means the biological parents of this child are in danger. Do not trust the family he is currently with. They have taken him for financial reasons. Keep him safe at all costs. I stopped breathing. I didn't know how long I stared at the letter. A minute, an hour, a lifetime. Every line blurred into the next. Taken, not adopted, not placed, not rescued. Taken for money, for something bigger, something darker. My chest tightened as I clicked the final folder. For my child. Inside was a single video file. I pressed play. The screen flickered. My father appeared. Point 10, maybe 12 years younger. Eyes red, jaw tight, breathing shaking. He looked terrified. "Hey, sweetheart," he began, voice cracking. "I don't know when you'll see this. I don't know if I'll still be alive. But you deserve to know the truth." He wiped his eyes. "You are not biologically mine. But you are mine in every way that matters." My stomach flipped. "I tried to protect you. God, I tried. But I failed. They took you. They forced me to play along. They threatened you. They threatened your real parents." He broke down. "They were good people. They didn't deserve what happened to them." I froze. "What happened to them is why your mother and brother can never know you saw this." He leaned closer to the camera. "They know who you really are. They knew before I did. And they kept it from me, so they could keep the money." My entire world collapsed. My father took a shaky breath and whispered, "They destroyed your real family. And they will destroy you too, if they know you're looking for the truth." The video ended. I sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to breathe. I wasn't adopted. I wasn't saved. I was stolen. And the people who raised me knew. They all knew. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom. Lights off. Laptop screen glowing in the dark like a doorway into a life I didn't know belonged to me. Every time I tried to breathe, it felt like inhaling shattered glass. My hands were shaking so violently I had to hold them between my knees. Stolen, not adopted, not placed, stolen. And the people who raised me, the people I called family, they were part of it. They were in on it. Eventually, the sun began to rise. Light crept through the blinds and painted the room gold. A beautiful morning. Completely wrong for the nightmare I had stepped into. I hadn't moved. My father's final words kept replaying in my mind. "They will destroy you too." I didn't know who they were. I just knew I was living under the same roof with them. My mother. My brother. Both asleep down the hall. In a house where I was never supposed to learn the truth. I finally stood up on unsteady legs and opened my door slowly, checking the hallway like a criminal. Everything looked the same. The same ugly rug, the same creaky floorboards, the same family photos on the wall. Photos that suddenly felt like props in someone else's story. But now I saw it differently. I wasn't part of this family portrait. I was the secret buried underneath it. As I walked toward the kitchen, I saw my mother sitting at the table, fully dressed, perfect hair, perfect posture. A cup of coffee untouched in front of her. She was waiting for me. When she lifted her eyes to meet mine, something inside me went cold. She wasn't surprised I was awake this early. She wasn't curious. She wasn't concerned. She was calm, too calm. "Rough night?" she asked. Her tone wasn't caring. It was testing. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." Her eyes flicked, just briefly, to the pocket where I had shoved the USB. She knew. She knew I had watched something. She didn't know how much. Not yet, but she knew enough. "You should get some rest," she said, folding her hands neatly. "We have a lot to handle today. Your father's affairs. There's paperwork, arrangements. And you're not yourself." She said it like an accusation. If feeling grief was suspicious, I simply nodded and turned away, heart sprinting inside my chest. But before I could leave the kitchen, she spoke again. "You know, your father was always dramatic. He liked secrets. He liked mystery. Don't let his paranoia taint his memory. I froze that I hadn't mentioned the USB and I hadn't mentioned anything. And yet, she was already trying to rewrite the truth. She stood up slowly, walked to the sink, and added, "Whatever he told you at the hospital, forget it. He wasn't in his right mind." My breath caught in my throat. She knew. She absolutely knew. But I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without a plan. Not when I still didn't know how deep this went. I forced a smile that felt like it was cutting my skin open. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll try." She smiled back. Thin, sharp, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that said, "Good. Keep pretending." I spent the next several hours pretending to act normal. Normal grieving child. Normal conversation. Normal everything. But inside I was screaming. Every glance my mother gave me felt like she was checking if I had discovered too much. Every time my brother walked past me, I felt him studying me out of the corner of his eye. And the more I watched them, the more the truth slid into place. The coldness, the distance. The way they always treated me like I didn't belong. Because I didn't. Not really. I was a transaction. A possession. A part of a deal gone wrong. Around noon, I went to my father's study. The room that always smelled like old books and dust and sadness, and something else I never recognized until now. Feared that I closed the door and locked it from the inside. Then I plugged the USB into my laptop again. This time, I focused on the smaller files, the ones I had skipped earlier in panic. There were notes, short, frantic messages my father had typed to himself. "They're planning something. I can't let them. Her family is in danger. I have to tell him eventually. The money wasn't mine. I didn't want it. Why won't they just let me go?" But then I found something else, something that made my blood turn to ice. A folder labeled, "Real Parents. Proof." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents, birth records, hospital forms, photos of the couple from the earlier folder, their names, their address, everything. And tucked between two scanned documents was a police report, filed by my biological parents. Filed the same year those old photos were taken. My vision blurred. I leaned closer to the screen. The words stabbed into me like knives. Missing child. Possible abduction. Investigation closed. Due to insufficient evidence. Closed. Filed away. Forgotten. Because someone, somewhere, had enough money or power to bury it. That's when I realized something horrifying. My father hadn't just been keeping this a secret, he had been running from it. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. A floorboard creaking. I froze. Slowly, I turned toward the study door. A shadow passed under the crack. Someone was standing right outside. Watching. Listening. Waiting. My heart lurched. For a moment, the shadow didn't move. Then it did. Slowly, quietly. Walking away. I didn't breathe until the sound faded. I closed the laptop, stuffed the USB deep into my pocket, and unlocked the door. When I opened it, my brother was standing in the hallway. Expression blank, eyes cold. "You've been in there a long time," he said. "What are you doing?" It wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. Guarding, monitoring. He wasn't wondering what I was doing. He was wondering what I knew. I forced a laugh. "Just looking for some old photos of Dad. For the funeral." He stared at me too long, like he was analyzing the lie. Then he stepped closer, so close I could smell the mint gum he always chewed. "You're not a good liar," he whispered. My stomach dropped. "But maybe," he added, "you're smart enough to keep your mouth shut." Then he turned and walked away without another word. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move. My brother knew. My mother knew. They were watching me, waiting for me to slip, waiting for me to make one wrong move, because they had taken a child before, and they weren't afraid to destroy another life to keep their secrets buried. My hands were trembling as the video started. The dim light of the garage flickered on the screen, and then my father's face appeared. Not the strong, steady man I grew up with. He looked older, defeated, almost scared. He took a long breath before speaking. "If you're watching this, I'm already gone." My stomach tightened. "I never wanted you to learn the truth like this, but I knew, when the time came, they wouldn't protect you. They never would." His voice cracked. "Your name, your blood, It belongs to a family much more powerful than mine. He paused and wiped his face with a trembling hand. I didn't adopt you because I wanted a child that I adopted you because the alternative was far worse. The screen flickered again. The next words hit me like a punch to the chest. Your biological family, the Karahan family. They didn't lose you. They hid you. I froze at my father leaned closer to the camera, voice barely above a whisper. You were never meant to grow up as an ordinary child. You were the heir. He swallowed hard. The only heir. My heart started racing. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered at the screen.as if he could hear me. I kept you away from them because your life depended on it. A heavy silence filled the video. Then, if the Karahans find you, they will take everything. Your name, your life, your freedom. And they will say it was their right. The video glitched again. My father's eyes suddenly looked sharp, almost urgent. You think they don't know where you are? You think they stopped looking? Another shiver shot through me. They never stopped. He leaned even closer. His final words were almost a warning. Trust no one in this house. Not your mother. Not your brothers. Not anyone who shares my name. They knew everything, and they hid it from you. Then the video ended. Just like that. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence that I stared at the blank screen, shaking, as one horrifying truth settled in. My entire life was a lie. And my real enemies might be living under the same roof as me. I sat there for almost a full minute, frozen, staring at the black screen long after the video ended. My father's warning echoed in my head. Trust no one in this house. But how was I supposed to live under the same roof with people who had been lying to me since the day I was born? I finally stood up, unplugged the USB, and walked back into the house. The hallway lights were still on. Too bright, too quiet that it felt like walking into a crime scene where everyone was pretending nothing happened. I reached the living room. I stopped at my mother and both of my brothers were there, waiting. Like they knew. Like they felt something had changed. At my mother's eyes landed on the USB in my hand. Her face went pale. Where were you? She asked, her voice shaky but trying hard to sound calm. Watching the truth. I answered. A silence fell over the room. Thick, heavy. My eldest brother, Emre, shifted uncomfortably. What truth? He asked, but his voice betrayed him. He already knew exactly what I meant. I held the USB up. You all lied to me, I said quietly. And Dad, he tried to tell me before he died, but you didn't let him. My younger brother jumped up from the couch. Oh, come on, he snapped. You don't understand what you're talking about. I understand everything, I said, cutting him off. My mother pressed her hand against her chest as if she couldn't breathe. It wasn't our choice, she whispered. We were protecting you. I laughed, cold and humorless. Protecting me from what? I asked. She didn't answer. I answered for her, from the Karahan family. My mother's eyes widened with pure fear, not of the name, but that I knew it. You don't understand how dangerous they are, she said, standing up. They would have taken you back the moment they found you. I stepped closer. Then tell me why. She closed her eyes as if the truth hurt her. You are not just their blood, she whispered. You are their power, their future, their legacy. My brothers exchanged worried looks. And if they get you, she continued, this entire family, your life as you know it, will disappear. I stared at her. Good, I said. My mother's face froze. Because you already made it disappear the day you all decided to lie to me. Before anyone could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then answered. A deep voice spoke on the other end. Calm, powerful, rehearsed. We've been looking for you for a long time. My heart stopped. I didn't say a word. Your father tried to hide you, the voice continued. But blood always finds its way home. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. Who is this? I managed to whisper. A short pause. Then, welcome back, Mr. Karahan. The call ended. Silence again. This time, not inside the house. Inside me. My mother stared at me, terrified. What did they say? I looked up at her. They found me. Her knees almost buckled. My brothers cursed under their breaths. and I finally realized something. Everything my father warned me about had already begun. I sat in the living room, the phone still trembling in my hand. The words, "Welcome back, Mr. Karahan," repeated over and over in my mind. My mother's hands were clasped tightly together, knuckles white. My brothers avoided my gaze completely. I could feel the walls of the house closing in. Every shadow seemed longer, every sound amplified. I knew they were listening, watching, waiting for me to make a wrong move that I couldn't stay there. I had to leave. I had to figure out what the Carahans really wanted. I grabbed my coat and slipped out through the back door, careful not to make a sound. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. My mind raced as I thought about the files, the photos, the letters, and the final video. Every piece of information pointed to one thing. My life had been manipulated from day one, and now the people who had stolen me were making their first move that I decided to go back to my father's study, hoping to find more clues in the USB, more evidence of who my real enemies were. I locked the door behind me and plugged in the USB again, hands shaking. This time, I focused on the DNA folder. There were multiple reports, charts, and letters from private investigators. One of the documents contained a recent photo. Someone had been tracking me. It was a man in a suit, standing at the edge of a park, watching a coffee shop. My heart raced. This was real. They had already been following me. Suddenly, a soft knock at the study door made me jump. My hand flew to my coat pocket, fingers brushing the USB. "Who is it?" I called out. No answer. The knock came again, slow and deliberate. I realized it wasn't anyone from my family. I would have heard them moving through the house. Panic surged. I unlatched the window and climbed down to the garden, careful to remain unseen. My mind was a whirlwind of possibilities. Was this the Carahans? Were they coming for me now? Should I call someone? No. If anyone answered, they could trace it. I had to move alone. I ran through narrow back streets, the early evening shadows stretching like fingers trying to grab me. I had no plan, no destination, just the urgent need to escape the people who had lied to me for my entire life. Then, as I turned a corner, I saw a small cafe tucked into the side of a street. It was quiet, with a few late patrons inside. I slipped in and sat in the darkest corner, trying to make sense of everything. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. "We know you have the USB. Meet us tomorrow at 10 a.m. or we take action." No number. No signature. Just a warning. My father's words came back, louder than ever. Trust no one. But who could I trust now? My mother? My brothers? The people who raised me? Or maybe someone else entirely? I pulled the USB from my pocket, staring at it as if it could answer the questions swirling in my mind. Every time I looked at it, I felt closer to the truth and yet farther from safety. I realized that if I wanted to survive, I couldn't just run. I needed information, allies, a strategy. The Carahans were powerful, and I was alone in a house that had always been my prison and my battlefield at the same time. The cafe clock ticked slowly, each second tightening the grip of dread around my chest. I had to act, and I had to act fast. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. would change everything. The game had begun, and now I was a player I had never asked to be. The only thing I knew for certain was that nothing would ever be the same again, that I spent the rest of the evening in the cafe, sipping a bitter coffee I barely tasted, my eyes glued to the USB in my hand. Every time I glanced at it, I felt like it was a live wire, a heartbeat connecting me to my father's secrets, to the family that had hidden my true identity, and to the Carahans who were clearly already tracking me. Outside, the streets were quiet, emptying as night settled over the city. Inside, I felt trapped between the past I thought I knew and the future I had never asked for. My mind kept replaying my father's words. Trust no one in this house. They knew everything, and they hid it from you. He had meant my mother, my brothers, and the people who raised me, but now I realized it extended far beyond that. The Carahans weren't just powerful, they were dangerous. They were calculating. And I was suddenly the center of a game I didn't even know I was part of. I stayed in the cafe until late, making notes about everything I had discovered in the USB, marking files, letters, photos, and the final video in meticulous order. I mapped connections, timelines, and the movements of the people mentioned. I realized that my life had been a carefully orchestrated lie, and my father had tried to shield me as best he could. Yet, even with all his precautions, my enemies had found me. The thought made my stomach churn. They had been patient, waiting until I was older, until I could inherit, until they could act. The stakes had never been higher. The next morning, I returned home, pretending to be normal, as if nothing had changed. My mother's eyes followed me the moment I stepped in. I could see the tension behind her calm, the fear she tried to hide with composure. My brothers were unusually quiet. The air felt thick, heavy, suffocating. I knew I had to confront them. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I needed to know who was truly on my side. I took the USB out of my pocket, holding it like a weapon. I know everything, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Everything about the Karahans, everything about the lies, everything about my real family. I know you've been hiding this from me all my life. My mother's hand went to her mouth, her eyes wide. My eldest brother, Emre, tensed. My younger brother, Murat, looked confused but alert. You don't understand, my mother whispered. We were protecting you. Your life depended on it. Protecting me from what? I demanded, my hands shaking. From them, she said, and for the first time she mentioned the name fully, the Karahans. They would have taken you back the moment they found out where you were. They have power, influence, and patience beyond imagination. We had to keep you hidden. I stared at her. Every word my father had warned me about came to life in that moment. I realized that if I wanted to survive, I couldn't just listen to anyone. I had to act, and I had to decide who I could trust. I couldn't let my mother's fear or my brother's hesitation dictate my choices. The Karahans were coming, and I had no more time to hesitate. I spent the day planning. I scanned the documents in the USB again, noting financial trails, secret properties, and hidden connections. I traced the address of the Karahan estate, identified family members with visible power, and even discovered some of their close allies. Each piece of information made me more aware of the danger I was in and the opportunity one might have to confront them on my own terms. By nightfall, I had a plan. I would lure my mother and brothers into admitting what they had done. I would gather all the evidence from the USB, and I would prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the Karahans. The next morning, I started subtly. I asked questions, leading with facts I had uncovered, dropping hints about the USB, about the real documents, and about the hidden money. My mother flinched at every mention. My brothers exchanged nervous glances, and for the first time, I saw cracks in the facade they had built for me my entire life. How much did you know? I asked calmly. My mother swallowed hard. We knew you weren't safe with them. We had no choice, she admitted. No choice. I repeated, voice rising. You lied to me. You let me grow up thinking I belonged to you, while my real family was out there, watching, waiting, planning. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Emre stepped forward. It's not what you think, he said. You have to understand, everything we did was for you. I shook my head. No, you acted in fear, not in love. And your fear is what put me in the exact danger my father warned me about. Now I need the truth. Everything. No more lies. It took hours. Every confession, every hesitation, every bitter truth spilled out of them. My mother revealed how the Karahans had exerted pressure on them, how they had manipulated her to keep me hidden, and how every lie was a chain designed to protect me at the cost of my knowledge and freedom. My brothers admitted their complicity, each revealing small secrets that tied into the larger web of deception. Every word built the image of my life not as I thought it was, but as a careful orchestration of someone else's power and fear. Finally, as night fell, the house was silent. I held the USB tightly, realizing that this confrontation was just the beginning. The Karahans were aware, and my father's warnings had been real. I had the evidence, I had the knowledge, and now I had the resolve. My next move would determine not just my survival, but the reclamation of my identity, the truth my father had died trying to protect me from uncovering too soon. And somewhere out there, waiting for me, was a family that would not rest until I was back where they wanted me to be. The game had escalated. There was no turning back. The next morning, the air in the house was heavy, almost suffocating. I could feel the eyes of my mother and brothers on me, even when I wasn't looking. Every move I made, every breath I took, seemed to be under scrutiny. I knew the Karahans were already aware of my existence. They had tracked me once, they could do it again. I had to move carefully, but I couldn't stay passive. I needed to strike before they had the chance to act. I grabbed the USB and packed a small bag, documents, a few essentials, and my father's letters. I had to leave, even for a few hours, to test their reactions, to see who among them was truly loyal, and who would betray me if given the chance. That I stepped outside and walked through the quiet streets, careful not to be seen. My thoughts raced. What if the Karahans were already nearby? What if my every step was being monitored? Each shadow felt like a threat, every passing car a possible enemy. I finally reached a small, secluded park and sat on a bench, taking a deep breath. The morning air was cold, but it brought clarity. I realized that staying in the house had been a trap. They knew the truth I had discovered, and now my family, those who raised me, were under immense pressure from the Karahans. They were pawns in a game I didn't fully understand yet. But pawns could be used, and I intended to use every advantage I had. Hours passed, and I returned home cautiously. I had noticed something unusual, small signs that someone had been in the house while I was gone. A misplaced book, a faint scent of perfume not belonging to my mother. My heart raced. The Karahans were closer than I thought. I waited until my mother and brothers were distracted and then confronted them directly. "I know someone has been here," I said calmly. "I know you're involved. Tell me everything now, or I will find out on my own." My mother's eyes flickered with fear, and my eldest brother took a step back. "You don't understand what's at stake," she whispered. "If you provoke them, they will come for all of us." "Exactly," I replied. "And that is why I need the full truth. No more hiding. No more lies." Finally, my mother broke down. She revealed everything. How the Karahans had orchestrated my kidnapping, how they had pressured her to keep me hidden, how every decision she made had been under their influence. She admitted that my brothers had been complicit, acting out of fear rather than malice, but also to protect themselves from the same wrath. Each revelation was like a blow, yet it clarified the web of deception. I realized that my life had never truly been mine. It had always been a battleground, manipulated by forces far beyond my understanding. The depth of betrayal left me furious, but also focused. I could not afford to waste time on anger alone. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. That evening, I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Using the documents and videos from the USB, I constructed a timeline of events, tracing every connection, every secret meeting, every financial trail that could lead me to the Karahans. I memorized names, faces, and addresses. Every detail mattered. When night fell, I instructed my mother and brothers to sit together in the living room. I laid out the evidence, piece by piece, forcing them to confront the truth they had hidden for so long. Their reactions were a mix of fear, shame, and desperation. My mother tried to plead, my brothers stammered excuses, but I held firm. They had played their parts well, but now it was time for accountability. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the house. My heart stopped. Everyone froze. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. I knew immediately who it was. The Karahans had arrived. I felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the moment my father had warned me about, the ultimate test. I moved quickly, taking the USB and the most critical documents with me. I led my mother and brothers into a side room and locked the door, giving us a temporary refuge. Through the window, I could see a black car parked outside, its engine running. Figures emerged, confident and deliberate. They had found me, just as my father had predicted. That I took a deep breath and stepped into the open, holding the USB like a shield. The Karahans approached, their presence commanding and intimidating. The leader, a tall man with sharp eyes and a cold smile, stopped in front of me. "Mr. Karahan," he said smoothly, "we've been waiting a long time." I stood my ground, my heart pounding but my mind clear. "I know everything," I said, "and I will not be taken back without answers." The man studied me for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Very well," he said. "Let's see if you are truly worthy of the truth your father tried to protect you from." And in that moment, I realized that the real battle had only just begun. The Karahans were powerful, ruthless, and patient. But I had my father's warnings, the evidence in the USB, and the knowledge of who had lied to me all these years. The confrontation ahead would determine not only my survival, but the reclamation of everything stolen from me: my identity, my life, and my legacy. The stakes were higher than I could have imagined, and the night stretched endlessly before us, filled with tension, secrets, and the promise of revelations that would change everything. The night air was sharp against my face as I stepped out to face the Karahans. The black car was parked quietly at the edge of the driveway, but the figures approaching were anything but quiet. I could see the leader clearly now, a tall man in a dark suit, eyes like knives, every movement controlled and deliberate. Behind him, two others flanked the car, their presence radiating authority. My mother and brothers were huddled behind me, tense, fearful, but unwilling to leave my side. I held the USB tightly, the weight of my father's secrets pressing into my palm like a weapon I had barely learned to wield. The leader stopped a few feet away and smiled coldly. "Welcome back," he said. "Your father tried to hide you, but secrets are temporary. Blood is permanent." His words sent a chill through me, but I forced myself to stand taller. "I know everything," I said, "about the lies, the theft, the manipulation, and I want answers before anything else happens." He tilted his head, examining me, as if gauging whether I was strong enough to survive. "Very well," he replied. "Let us see if you are ready to claim what is rightfully yours." He gestured, and one of his aides handed me a folder. Inside were photos, birth records, and correspondence I had never seen. Every document confirmed what my father had told me. I was the heir to the Karahan fortune, the only legal successor, and the target of a hidden war that had started before I was even born. I realized in that moment that my life had been a chessboard, every move preordained by forces I barely understood, and now the final game was being played. I turned to my mother, searching her eyes for answers. She met my gaze, trembling. "It's all true," she whispered. "Everything your father tried to protect you from, it's all real." My brothers were silent, fear and guilt etched into their faces. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. Her lips quivered, but she could only shake her head. "We thought we were protecting you from them, from yourself, from the truth," she said. That I glanced at the USB and decided it was time to reveal the final secrets. I connected it to my laptop and opened the last locked folder, labeled simply, Truth_Final. Inside were video recordings, confessions, and documents from my real parents, the Karahans. I played the first video. My mother, the real one, appeared on the screen, tears streaming down her face. She spoke urgently, explaining why my father had hidden me, the danger I had been in, and the power struggles within the Karahan family that could have destroyed me if I had been discovered too soon. Every word was a revelation, every frame a confirmation that my life had been orchestrated by powerful hands. As the video ended, the leader stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You see," he said, "your father tried to protect you. But now, you must choose. Embrace your heritage or remain a pawn of lies." My blood ran cold. I realized he wasn't asking. He was testing me. I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on my shoulders, the legacy my father had tried to shield me from, now thrust into my hands. Before I could respond, a sudden noise erupted from the side of the house, a crashing sound, followed by screams. One of the aides had broken through a window. Chaos erupted instantly. I grabbed the USB and pulled my mother and brothers toward the garage. The Karahans followed, but I was faster than they expected. We ran through the side door, narrowly avoiding the armed guards. Adrenaline fueled every step as I realized that not all of the Karahans wanted me dead. Some wanted leverage, others wanted answers. We reached the old abandoned warehouse my father had once used as a safe house. Inside, I set up the USB on a laptop and projected all the evidence. My family could see everything: financial documents, hidden accounts, secret letters, and the final recordings from my real parents. My mother finally broke down completely, sobbing and confessing every lie, every withheld truth. My brothers admitted their fear and complicity. I realized that while they had protected me out of fear, they had also become part of the web I needed to unravel. Suddenly, a voice called out from the shadows. "You've done well to survive this long," it said. A tall woman stepped into the dim light. My real mother, the woman from the USB videos. She had been secretly observing, preparing to reclaim her son. She explained the final twist. The Karahans had splintered into factions, some willing to protect me, some to destroy me. She had risked everything to ensure I had the knowledge and tools to survive the coming storm. With her guidance, I realized I was no longer a pawn. I was now a player, ready to reclaim my life, my identity, and the legacy that had been stolen from me at birth. The night stretched into hours of planning and preparation. Every document, every recording, every piece of intelligence was cataloged. I knew the Karahans would come again, stronger, more ruthless, but I had allies I had never known I needed. The game had shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. And for the first time in my life, I felt the power of my father's guidance, the strength of my true bloodline, and the clarity of purpose that would allow me to face the Karahans, dismantle their manipulations, and reclaim everything that had been hidden from me. The dawn broke over the city with a pale light that barely cut through the tension hanging in the air. I knew this day would decide everything: my life, my identity, and the fate of the Karahan's long-hidden secrets. The safe house was quiet, almost too quiet. My real mother was with me, guiding every move. She had arranged for safe exits, surveillance of the Karahans, and even allies within their own ranks who wanted change. But the most important tool I had was knowledge: the USB, the files, the videos, the confessions. With that, I held the power my father had left me. The first contact came faster than expected. A black SUV approached the warehouse with precision. I could see multiple figures stepping out, their posture calm, controlled, confident. The leader from the night before walked forward, flanked by two men who had been shadows in my life for years, unknown enforcers of the Karahan will. I took a deep breath, tightening my grip on the USB. "I'm done running," I called out. "Everything you've hidden from me ends today." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Brave words," he said, voice cold. "Do you truly understand what you're asking?" I stepped forward, each movement deliberate. "I understand everything. Your lies, your manipulations, the lives you've destroyed. I understand more than you think. And I will not be taken back. Not now. Not ever." There was a long silence. Then, unexpectedly, one of the enforcers spoke. "He's telling the truth," the man said. "The files, we've seen them. This changes everything." Confusion flickered across the leader's face. My heart pounded. Factions within the Karahans were not unified. Their arrogance, their centuries of control, had blinded them to the possibility that even their own ranks might betray them. I realized then that my father had given me more than warnings. He had given me a head start, and now it was time to use it. I activated the projector from the USB, displaying every secret: hidden bank accounts, forged documents, confessions from my mother, letters from my father, and finally, recordings of meetings within the Karahan family itself. Each revelation was a blow to the facade of power. The enforcers shifted uncomfortably, some visibly angered, others fearful. "These lies end today," I said, "and you will answer for everything you've hidden." The leader finally reacted. "You dare to expose us?" he demanded, stepping closer. But the cracks were showing. His confidence faltered as his own allies hesitated. One of them, a woman who had remained in the shadows, stepped forward. "He has the right," she said firmly. "We've been controlled by our own arrogance for too long. The truth must prevail." The leader froze, eyes darting between us. In that moment, I realized the battle was not just physical, it was psychological. Power shifted on perception, and I had it. The balance had changed. Chaos erupted next. Some of the Karahans tried to seize the USB, but I had anticipated this. Quick movements, precise actions, and guidance from my real mother allowed us to gain control. One by one, the enforcers either surrendered or fled. The leader attempted one final move, a desperate attack, but I was ready. In a swift confrontation, I overpowered him, forcing him to confront the truth in the documents. His face went pale as every secret he had counted on to remain hidden now became public within his own ranks. Finally, silence returned. The Karahans had been humbled, their hidden manipulations exposed, and their internal divisions now undeniable. My mother embraced me, tears streaming. My brothers, who had stood by through lies and deceit, now understood the full scope of the betrayal and joined in rebuilding a new understanding. I looked at the USB one last time, knowing it contained the past that had nearly destroyed me, but also the evidence and knowledge that would ensure I controlled my future in the weeks that followed. The Karahans attempted to reconcile with the truths I had revealed, some accepting the new balance of power, others vanishing entirely. My father's legacy, once hidden and secretive, became my shield and my weapon. I had reclaimed my identity, secured my inheritance, and most importantly, discovered who I truly was beyond the lies, the fear, and the manipulations I stood in the now silent estate. Watching the sunrise, I felt a sense of clarity I had never known. The game had been treacherous, the battles intense, but I had survived. I was no longer the pawn. I was the player. And everything my father had left me, the warnings, the USB, the hidden truths, had prepared me for this exact moment, to step into my life as the rightful heir, the keeper of secrets, and the master of my destiny. The past was revealed. The threats were neutralized. And at last, the story that had begun with a hidden USB and a father's secret had reached its end. But the knowledge I carried would shape not just my life, but the future of the Karahan legacy for generations to come.